how popular is hedonistic culture in our age? How popular is it to men to be like playboys and Hugh Hefners? How popular is it for OnlyFans and, you know, girls to be involved in that realm? Why? It's not just being idealistic. I think these are serious matters because it does run the course of where society will go and where society will not go.
What are the repercussions of losing an understanding of what Christ represents?
Yeah. Today's age is the worship of the self. I need to do this because it's best for me and it's best for my life. It's all me.
It's kind of built on a lack.
Yes.
And you're never good enough, and so you're always kind of put down. And I think that's something that I've really rebelled against.
That's good insight.
What you're really big on is ideologies and archetypes.
Archetypes, you have to understand Plato a little bit. Plato was trying to say, look, these ideas are inaccessible in the material world. You don't have to be a Christian, you could be an atheist and you can view that ideal. We can take away evil, we can manipulate the brain, and we can let an AI system control how the world is governed. But then are we human beings anymore?
Hello and welcome back to Rocket Pod. On today's show, we're joined by Felipe Dinis.
Felipe really enjoys just accumulating knowledge and sharing that online, and I think that's why I was drawn to him. That's why I connected with him, and I'm really excited to bring him on today because we get into some topics that I spend a lot of time thinking about in my own time. So if you're into those kinds of things, then definitely this one's for you.
Welcome, Felipe.
Felipe,
hello.
Welcome to Rocket Pod.
Hello. Amazing setup.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too.
We've got James here in the co-host seats. I guess I'm the captain today.
Spartan t-shirt. Lovely.
And I have to say, I'm very intrigued about this subject matter. Well, in fact, what Felipe's work's all about. So I'm going to sit here, and if there's anything I don't understand, I'm probably going to jump in and. From the older generation perspective,
definitely. So we've known each other for
good 3 years.
Yeah,
is it 3 years?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Actually, it might have even been longer. I think
maybe.
It might be like 4.
Maybe.
Do you know, like in a month, it's going like 2020 is 4 years ago.
Okay.
A lot of changes, a lot of growth.
Yeah.
A lot of, even from your side, man.
Big
Definitely. Developments from your side.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But you as well.
So I appreciate it.
For those that don't know you, do you want to tell us a bit about who's Felipe?
So, because we started talking when this is how, you talked about psychology. In essence, people start researching psychology because they just want to be better. It's self-help. You want to improve yourself. So that's the obvious caveat.
Yeah.
So my journey began with pain. So I would say pain is always a gateway towards seeing some sort of light. I know that's metaphorical, but I think it's important to state that. And so with pain, it allowed me to, okay, cool, let me look at self-help. Let me look at just general psychology. Even when I started learning about the shadow, quote unquote, it was Jordan Peterson. Yeah. Obviously, Jordan Peterson is renowned, blah, 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 blah. But he's always that gateway kind of, you can call it gateway drug to different types of philosophies and ideas. Yeah, he opened my eyes to Carl Jung. So yeah, pain was definitely the gateway towards seeking for something more and realizing my life is not good. I'm not good enough. I'm failing. What should I do to aim up? And yeah, that's why I began the Instagram page in a weird way. It wasn't even related to what I do today, to be honest. It was called Mindset Finance. So, and then it developed more into a self-help page for a little bit, and now I'm starting to get into more of a specialized kind of arena, I'd call it.
Yeah.
So now I would be more focused on religion. I'll be focused more on archetypes, even a little bit of Christianity, to be honest with you, because that's not a fashionable topic. People don't like that topic. So it's a mixture of kind of more abstract topics, but I do try to anchor them as hard as I can, even though it's quite a difficult job to do that. So that's kind of where I'm at.
And I think you do that really, really well.
I appreciate it.
Xander's talks, it's spoken really highly about you for the last several months, actually, since we started working together.
I appreciate it.
When you, so just curious, I know obviously your listeners and your followers know what pain you're referring to, but for our audience, when you talk about pain, could you, if you're comfortable, could you just elaborate on what the pain was that that kind of hit you, I got you at the rock bottom, or whatever it, however you want to describe it.
It began with, I would say, late teens, early 20s, my parents broke up, and it got relatively severe within that period of time. My dad tried to commit suicide as well. And so that already began a sort of, pain in my heart, let's call it that. But I mean, I was going out with an ex at the time, and it was me breaking up with that ex due to selfish reasons, to be honest with you, more hedonistic, lustful reasons, and then realizing actually I'm the bad guy too. And actually that was the main kind of call to action when I realized, no, I need to do better. I shouldn't be operating in this kind of frame of mind. So being with my ex was actually a blessing to help me, like, change my path in a way. So yeah, it began there. So I'm 29 now. I was 24. Okay. So from 24 onwards, it's been quite a steady climb, let's call it that. Just seeking as much as I could in terms of knowledge, wisdom, black and white knowledge, let's call it that as well. So yeah, that's where it began.
Okay. So when your dad attempted to commit suicide, did you blame yourself in any way? Did you take, I mean, I know it's obviously, can you talk about that? Was that part of the pain? Did you feel that?
It was weird because I pushed everything underneath the carpet till the ex stuff. And then obviously that type of pain came up. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I was till my early 20s, I was still a bit lost. But it wasn't until about 24 I started realizing I need to point fingers at myself rather than other people. So I did point fingers at my dad at the time. But obviously, we've got an amazing relationship now. That's good. So that's really important. But yeah, it's just obviously if you put pain underneath the carpet, it's going to explode. Whatever you suppress will just arise. So yeah.
Okay,
I think that's actually a really nice segue because responsibility, right? Personal responsibility, taking responsibility. And what you're really big on is ideologies and archetypes. And I think I can guess who's your favorite archetype. But I guess, if we want to dive into.
So again, it's so weird how it works. So it's when you realize, you take responsibility, you realize there are some objective qualities in this world. So again, we live in an age where everything's subjective, everything is relative. I feel this way, so it's, respect my feelings. I can be like this, and I think that's actually wrong objectively. If there is objective truth, if you're seeking truth in life, like you mentioned about self-help, reading self-help books, it's like, well, what's the point of self-help books if you're not seeking for some kind of truth at the end of the tunnel? So again, I think we do live in a distorted kind of age, and so the goal, another goal of mine is, again, helping people to find some sort of objectivity in their life. Let's call it that.
Okay. Well, so when you talk about archetypes, for those listeners that have never unfamiliar with that word, could you kind of break it down a little bit? What is an archetype?
Yeah, sure. So archetypes actually comes from Carl Jung, who was a depth psychologist in the 20th century. But actually, Carl Jung's archetypes derives from Platonic forms, so Plato's theory of forms. So to understand archetypes, you have to understand Plato a little bit. And you can read the Republic. It details like the good, the beautiful, the true. And the theory of forms is related to, again, we've got, see, this is real. You can see this is obviously real, but there's ideas that you cannot see, but they're also real. And so Plato was trying to say, look, these ideas are inaccessible in the material world, but they do conduct affairs. They conduct our affairs in reality. So once you understand Plato's forms, it links into a little bit of sacred geometry. It links into the fact that there is objective qualities in this world. So now linking it back to Carl Jung's archetypes, he was an empiricist psychologist as well. So he didn't just make the claim that archetypes is something from Plato's theory. He tried to analyze it through his patients. And that's why he derived his theory of collective unconscious. And he said, look, there's something in the unconscious that's deeper than the personal unconscious that derives these different forms, these different patterns that manifest throughout humanity. And so archetypes are a symbolic representation of these patterns, which contains ideals, which contains virtues, which I would say virtues are calls to action. A virtue, speaking truth. Being truthful, that's a virtue. So that's your call to action to be better. So I would say that's
archetypes. I mean, correct me if I'm right. It's like the physical manifestation of an aspect of reality.
Yeah. So it's like let's see if I can ground.
Well, I mean, there's a Spartan. Maximus.
Yeah, so just say it's my midlife crisis.
So then define what a Spartan is. What is a Spartan? Like I'm asking you, what do you think a Spartan is?
Someone who's incredibly strong and resilient and goes into the trenches to do what needs to be done.
But there's something objective to it, correct? So even though Spartan has, you might say there might be some negative elements. Being a Spartan, there's some positive elements related to courage, related to going to the trenches, and these are virtues anyone can pick up. It's not exclusive to the Spartan. It's we can take it, and then it's up to you to take it or leave it. And then my point is, going to the modern age, it's we leave it. Forget it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Most people take the mickey out of me and call me Spartacus. I remember a bike crew, and I wore this, and I just
take a look at this guy.
All right, Mr. Spartan. That's quality.
So let's stick on that topic a little bit more. Obviously, then there's there's Maximus and stuff, but there's also Christ, right? And I know,
True.
And now obviously, not everybody is Christian. Not everybody will subscribe to that. But just staying on the topic of ideologies and archetypes, and how we have moved away from that in today's age, and why what are the repercussions of losing an understanding of what Christ represents.
I think the best way to base it is, again, you don't have to be a Christian. You could be an atheist, and you can view that ideal in a way that actually you can even apply it, because I have to apply Jung's map quickly in terms of the map of the mind. Shadow, and then it gets into anima animus, and then it gets into the self. The important bit is the self. And the self is like the ultimate personification of a certain archetype. And that self, from Jung's perspective, might be embodied by, let's say, the Buddha, or let's say Christ. So that was kind of his view. Then the question is, why? What do these people represent from his map? It's like, well, these are very high ideals, and I think humanity needs a mountain, an archetypal mountain to climb. Even though maybe the majority of humanity never reaches this archetypal mountain, it should be there. It should be like a poster. It should be, we're not going to worship the state, but we should worship something a little bit higher than the state. And then the reason for bringing up Christ, so you brought up Christ, is, well, we live in the West. What's the West base? What's the foundation of the West? Christianity. You can't run away from that. And I think the confusion because Jung warned Western man to be seeking in Eastern places for their sense of spirituality. It's like his perspective was our psychology, like a bit like a biological evolution. It does occur over time. Our psyche evolves over time. And so Western man's soul, we can call it that, would have evolved in the plains of Europe, for example, which Christianity was the baseline for close to 2,000 years. So it's, again, it's not just being idealistic. I think these are serious matters, because it does run the course of where society will go and where society will not go, for example. But
okay, what are some of the most important ideologies or aspects of Christ, the archetype, that you think are important, that people need to take on board and embody a certain level of, in order to bring about, a bit more peace to the chaos?
I think, that's a good question. I think love is thrown around a lot in today's age, but Christ is the ultimate personification of sacrificial love. You can see the symbolism of the cross. And obviously the point of him, it's not just the rhetoric, he died for your sins, blah, blah, blah. Don't see it from that Christian angle. Just see it from the guideline of look at his life, Look at the way he lived. Look at the way he sacrificed himself for the greater good. And I think that's also an ideal that people can apply to their lives. And you can ground it to even a level of how popular is hedonistic culture in our age? How popular is it to men to be like playboys and Hugh Hefners? How popular is it for OnlyFans and, you know, girls to be involved in that realm? Why? That's a very selfish, there's no sacrifice there. And so another component would be, look, being in a relationship, getting married, there is a sacrificial undertone to it. And getting married, there's also the undertone of love, of course. There's love. So it's those two that combines really well. But people, again, they've forgotten about what a sacred marriage is, a holy union is. So I think that's the key. There's loads of other virtues you can take from Christ, but the sacrificial love element, because from the Christian paradigm, love is the ultimate gateway towards truth. That's what Christian, like, you know, any sort of Christian would believe. That's it. That's the end game.
Yeah. Because the only thing that just kind of sparked in my mind was that, you know, love is a verb. You know, it takes intention, it takes action, it takes work.
Yes.
I mean, I've been married for 23 years now. And I'm really fortunate. I have a lovely wife and 3 beautiful daughters who are now teenagers, and now I've kind of, you know, they're going to adulthood. But I think it does take work. The sacrificial piece is interesting, as far as I think you do need to put, you know, your spouse in a marriage context first, but also I think it's give and take. But I think that that need to, you know, love isn't just it's not just. I think when I was younger, I thought I grew up in a very, you know, evangelical Christian household, and I've kind of rebelled against it in recent years, or in, you know, later years. But I think. That sacrificial piece is, I had never really thought about that because there's, what's the word? I can't think of the word, but anyway, it's kind of got my mind.
It's interesting because even you mentioned
compromise. That's the word. Compromise. When
you're
in a relation, in any relationship, sometimes you know, you might not want to do that, but actually you compromise and
because again, today's age is the worship of the self. It's how I feel, like I mentioned earlier. It's about, I need to do this because it's best for me and it's best for my life. It's all me. But it's
which isn't necessarily
it's not
like
a bad thing. If you've got if you believe in hierarchies and you believe there's a certain order in life, let's say, going back to the ideals, going back to archetypes again, and you believe there is a certain hierarchy, reaching, let's say, the best archetype from my mind map, you could say Christ. It's like, well, you still have to sacrifice. You pick your poison in life. There's always sacrifices you pick and choose. You bear the fruits for your choices in life. But again, everything's very short term at the moment because what does our country stand for now? I don't know. I don't know. It's very unfortunate to say that. I don't know. And it feels very, everything is in the air. And it's not a nice feeling. And it's not a nice feeling for people in this country to feel in that particular way. So, but I just want to link back to what you said about evangelical Christianity. I think evangelical Christianity in some ways is a product of a materialist, consumerist culture. And people don't even realize that. And I know some people might criticize me, but when you really research it and dig down, it's like, well, worshipping the sacred is something embodied. It's not very black and white. It's not very fundamentalist. The Bible says this, you should. It's like, no, that's not how you treat people. Again, what does love mean? Love is an embodied action. It's not about you tell people this is the right way to go, the wrong way to go. So that's the problem with parts of Christianity, because it's even the message is falling a little bit with that angle. But that's my perspective.
No, it's interesting. So I mean, I think what I've rebelled against it's the ignorance piece. It's like, you know, just trust in God, but actually there's no action behind it. It's the patriarchal, and actually in a lot of religions it's very patriarchal. So there's always you know, a boss basically, and it's I think my journey, I won't dwell on it too much, but it's very much trying to, you know, get find my strength from within, and just don't blindly follow something without really giving it some thought. And
100%.
And I think one of the things that that's kind of come up is that, you know, we always used to pray about things as kids, and my parents, and they're wonderful people, but I've felt in kind of brushing a lot under the carpet because God will take care of it. But then in older, in my 40s, these things kind of bubble up, and then you've got to deal with them. So they never were really dealt with. But it's just it's very interesting because I've sat with atheism for a bit that didn't really fit me. But now I'm I don't know whether I'm a humanist or it's like picking bits from different religions and different spiritual paths and like almost forming my own. Maybe is that an archetype? It's almost forming my own. Authority or my own. Beliefs. Anyway.
No, it makes sense because again, I think everyone goes through that atheistic Dawkins paradigm, and it doesn't lead you to anywhere. And then I was in the New Age, and then Buddhism really I still like Buddhism a lot, but I think you kind of have to find peace with something, because you all pick something, and I believe you can't cherry pick too hard, because at the end it's like there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new the ancients didn't figure out. Wisdom should be timeless, because it is. Wisdom is timeless. It goes back to an archetypal structure of reality. And so when people say, oh, we've progressed, we've moved far, it's like, yes, maybe in some ways technologically, but there's a one-dimensional take in history. It's like history should be viewed in one way. It's like, no, history should be viewed holistically. There's also a lot of goods in the past, and reality was very harsh in the past. And so people are even more connected to the pain and suffering of reality, and they're more connected to nature, for example. So in our entitled culture, even me, how can we sit here and say, I know the sacred more than the ancients? I was like, no, you don't. No, you don't. We live in a cocoon society, a cocoon civilization, and that's really important to consider. So I think, there's a lot of things to figure out.
I think the again, what's kind of interesting. I hadn't prepared to even talk about this stuff, but there's a lot of arrogance in like the evangelical world, and again, I think they just need to be aware of it, because it's really can be very off-putting. For example, there's folk, I won't mention any names, but there's some folks very close to me that they will not agree that we're all on our own spiritual journey. That will not, that basically that they don't have any more authority to say what's right or wrong than I do. That is not that I'm not allowed. It's always this. You're wrong, and I think that's the other thing. It's like you mentioned, but you did mention a comparison or a link between. Is it capitalism or consumerism to Christianity? It's almost like it's kind of built on a lack. And you're never good enough, and you're always in you're always in the lack. You're never good enough. So you're always kind of put down, and I think that's something that I've really rebelled against.
That's good insight. The comparison between consumerism, the lack, and that part of Christianity. Because don't forget, how old is evangelical Christianity? Probably a couple hundred years. Protestant Reformation was 500 years. So you have to understand as well, going back to the virtues, what Christ embodied. What's the other key virtue? Humility. So even if you have the truth, you bow down. You bow down. Even if you know in your heart you've got the truth, it's like you don't start pointing fingers at other people. What I mentioned earlier, when I faced pain, it was pointing fingers at myself every single time. So even if I think I have the world view, it's like, no, the only way you represent a world view is through your actions. It's how you act in life. So if someone's saying, oh, you must believe this, it's like, no, I don't. Of course people naturally rebel, whether it's what's going on with modern ideologies, whether it's communism, whether it's we live under theocracy, and it's like it's like anything you must. It never works. People like to rebel. But there is, again, going back to the archetypal structure, there is, I believe, objective truth.
So that's what I wanted to say. We're dancing around subjective truth, but then the topic of objective truth versus subjective. Right now, the age is probably like really, it's just all subjective, right? I'm offended, therefore you should feel bad for it. And how do you decipher? How do you, like, obviously what's true in your heart. Don't go then pointing fingers, but then anything that you learn, that you read, or how do you even like begin to know what's objectively true?
That's why I made a point about sacred geometry as well. You can see even how So even going, I'm not trying to bash evangelical Christianity today, but again, you can see a lot of the modern Christian buildings. They're ugly pieces of work, to be honest, in terms of how they look. Like objectively speaking, aesthetically, they are ugly looking. I'm not saying it as to bash it. When you look at ancient structures, they are literally built to aim at the highest, and they're built in a particular way. So when you're looking at objective truth, it's like, well, it's all laced in the traditional perspectives. You can see it in Islam. You can see it in some of the most beautiful mosques in Islam. You can see it in Buddhism, some of the beautiful temples, the cathedrals all over Europe. Wow. Like I've traveled from Orthodox Eastern Europe to Portuguese Western Europe. It's like amazing. You can see how the structure is built, how it's geared for like a mysterium. It's dark. The art is beautiful. It calls you to something higher. It's lofty, and it's purposely built in a way because it's using the objective qualities of the world. Again, I'm not an architect, but they use objective qualities in the world to create this structure that gears all the way up. So,
so
again,
what do you mean by objective structures? So sacred geometry.
So
right.
Again, I'm with sacred geometry. You can think of the natural environment. Let's say the natural environment. You can see the shapes in like honeycombs, for example, or snowflakes. There's a specific shape that goes around. I know the New Age community love, it's like I'm in a certain frequency, you know, and there's level truth to that, because there is like frequency with music, and it does create certain patterns. So the point being, going back to the Platonic forms, there is actual patterns that are they're just objective.
Feel good.
Yeah, they're just objective because it's there. It's a fact. So then, but then it goes into the line of querying. Okay, if that's objective in terms of these patterns, in reality, what else is objective? What does that mean for humanity? What does that does it mean we should create? Again, why do we see? This is not a superficial statement, but in terms of beautiful people, they tend to be more symmetrical. It makes more sense because, you know, going back to the honeycomb shape, it's more symmetrical. It's a shape,
like
it's
golden ratio.
Yes. So there's these truths that you can't deny. Whether you want to sugarcoat it because you want to protect someone's feelings or not, it's still a reality. And again, going back to this is where if you're one-dimensional with your take, someone could say, hey, but you're dismissing other people. It's like, no, I'm not. If you're humble and you love other people, you'll never dismiss anyone. You will never dismiss anyone. So I think that's it's the double. You have to see it from those two. And if you can integrate those two perspectives, you live in a wonderful world. You can never. Just one more caveat, the wonderful world. I believe we can never have a utopia. There's no such thing as utopia on planet Earth. I do believe we're fallen, and I do believe we're still in that narrative because we're narrative creatures in terms of the narrative of Genesis, because it is the fall in my eyes. If you see it metaphorically.
Okay,
but anyway.
Do you want to make a little before?
Yeah, no, I think the only thing that came to my mind was the objective truth, or the forms in architecture, what do you call it? Sacred
geometry.
Sacred geometry. It's there is a response from looking at something beautiful. But your response, or how it comes back at you, does that then become subjective, or is that your objective truth? I'm just wondering, because everything, wherever action, there's always a reaction.
I think I know what you're trying to say. I think it doesn't mean human beings are not idiosyncratic. Doesn't mean human beings are not individuals. We're still individuals. And so the package could be laced. So going back to archetypes, it's like, well, there is objective qualities in the masculine archetype, you know, being courageous, boundaries, truth. So they're objective qualities because it's just speaking truth is, instead of, you know, you're not wearing glasses. Obviously, you're wearing. I'm lying to you. There's glasses, so that's me lying. But the way they manifest in every character is like, if we embodied those virtues, we're not going to be exactly the same. No. We're still going to be individuals. This is an important caveat again. We're still going to be individuals, but we're still aiming for something higher,
right? Yeah,
by embodying these virtues. So I'm still going to be me. You're still going to be you, and you're going to be you. So I think that's the important kind of
balance.
Yes.
Between even just like the understand, like we're one, we're all one with the universe. But then also, atheism is like just the complete opposite of that, and it's like
too cold.
It's
too cold. It's too rationalistic. It doesn't provide any source of, again, I was going to rant about atheism, but you go on.
No,
Have a
that's
rant.
fine.
Yeah, no. It's just atheism doesn't have any like end goal. It's like, well, you know, we allow people to believe it. It's like, yeah, good people do that. You can be a religious person and believe that. You can be a spiritual person. If you're actually a good person, if you believe, again, these qualities are objective, what does good mean? It's like, well, you're not going to point fingers and push something. You're going to, if you've got a particular perspective, like myself, I will voice my perspective. I will say, this is my view, but I'm not going to tell you, you should live your life in this way. You should. It's like, no. I think it's a fine line.
It's kind of the rich tapestry of life, isn't it?
Yes.
Everyone's different and unique. And that uniqueness is just really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think as well, it just kind of highlights the point that, you know, everyone, just like talking to Dan earlier, it's like we're all kind of born into a certain culture scape, a certain framework that we kind of develop our ideologies and everything. But sometimes we can outgrow that. So, you know,
Absolutely.
if you know, as you get older and you get more experienced, you know, if you're open to new ideas, then that can just keep expanding. Some people just stay in the same box and they don't stray from that, and that's fine. But I think it's a very complex, beautiful world. There's, you know, where there's light, there's dark, and you know, but it's almost like having to kind of make sense of it all. But it's almost like putting your head up, and you know, it's scary sometimes to actually, you know, take on new ideas. But it also takes courage to, you know, I think you said, if you've got humility, if you just just kind of, you're open. You're going to react in a negative way if you don't disagree with someone. It's just being open, taking it on board. How you respond to something is really, really key.
Absolutely. Because if you're reacting, then you're clearly attached to a specific perspective.
It triggers something.
Why are you so attached to that specific? Exactly. Why are you so attached? It's like, well, both of you can completely disagree with what I'm saying, but that's fine.
Yeah.
All the best. You know, it is what it is. Yeah.
That's like a bit of the Buddhism coming through there. Like, don't attach, and attachment is
I think this is my view. I think every spiritual perspective has, again, truth. It's laced with truth. And then where I differ with more the New Ages is, again, you can't say they're all exactly true.
Yeah.
Because it creates that communist kind of perspective, equality. It's like, well, there's got to be one that offers something better than another one, and one offers something better than the other. You have to be objective. Exactly. You have to.
Yeah. So I think we started dancing around atheism and God and stuff. I think I'd like to go into that a bit. When we met up the last time, we were talking about God is dead.
Nietzsche.
Who said that? Yeah, Nietzsche.
Who said that?
Nietzsche in the 19th century. He made that famous proclamation. Yeah, you go for it.
Yeah. I think it's just really, when you start to see this stuff, it's quite apparent now, in today's age.
Yes.
You mentioned the fall earlier, that you believe we're fallen.
Yes.
I want to unpack that a bit. And then we could go into how we can start to find our way back. But let's dive into that a bit.
Okay, so, well, Nietzsche, some people love Nietzsche. I'm whatever. He was definitely prophetic with his point of view, because in the 1800s, he said what he said. God is dead. Look what the ideologies that arose in the 20th century, Nazism, communism. They were anti-God. Germany forgot about their Christianity. Look what happened. Russia definitely forgot about the Orthodox, because Russia's a very Orthodox Christian nation, if you don't know. One of the most Christian nations historically, by the way. But they went completely 180.
Yeah.
Chose communism, and that was a disaster. And so
when I say God is dead and we are fallen, what's your take?
So going back to the ideological perspective of the 20th century, in terms of, well, God is dead, it led to Nazism, it led to communism. Now it's led to a postmodern world, again, of subjectivity, and nothing really matters per se. It's like, well, is there heaven? Is there, well, depends how you view life. Is it literal? Is it metaphorical? I don't know. You tell me. It's up to you. I don't know.
I mean, so why do you think that what are the examples in today's culture and society that makes you think that we are fallen.
I think to be fair, the fallen bit, it's related to all times. Human beings are not perfect. We're not perfect. We're not God itself. We're not beyond this universe. We can't be perfect. You know, it's impossible. That's my perspective. You can be close. You can aim up. That's why an ideal's there. Some ideals are very hard to reach. I'm not saying, you know, if the whole world acted like Jesus Christ, I guess we'd live in a great world. Let's face it. But let's be realistic. Is that going to happen? No. No. So when I say the world is fallen, it's just a fact that evil is always going to light. There's always going to be people with a dark heart, maybe hate in their heart, more susceptible to that sort of hate. And that's just the life we're contending with. And just to bring on the modern age a little bit with AI and technology, you can say, hey, we can we can take away evil, we can manipulate the brain, and we can let an AI system control how the world is governed. But then, are we human beings anymore? Is it a human world anymore?
Yeah, we can genetically engineer now. Well, get to that point. Is that, you know?
Yeah, it creates a lot of ethical complications. It was I don't know if you heard of there's a technology called CRISPR, and a lab in China, they created the first artificially created baby, and there was a lot of scandal in the scientific community and internationally. I think that person went into prison who created the baby, went into prison for a few years. I can't remember how long, but it does create a lot of conundrums. And
it's like we're playing God.
Playing with fire, yes. We're playing with fire, in my opinion, because again, just linking it back into the objective qualities of archetypes, platonic forms, sacred geometry, virtues, Christ, Maximus, but you know, in terms of archetypal like ways of being, archetypal structures, it's like, well, there is objective qualities in the world. Now you're trying to distort these objective. What are you doing? What are you? What's the end goal? This is the key thing. What is the end goal? So I don't know, but going back to the AI perspective, this is where I get worried. The transhumanist perspective of technology. It feels very. It feels like a modern day resurrection. Let's call it that.
Okay.
So the resurrection of, when you see the eschatology or the end times of the Bible, Revelation, because I believe that's a pattern per se.
Yeah.
Which scares people, but is what it is. I do believe unconsciously, again, we can speculate all day long, but I do think the people that hold in the highest echelons of power, they are creating some sort of materialistic resurrection of sorts,
right,
to escape this reality. And to, again, how many times have we heard about uploading our consciousness into the ether of the internet? That's that, and people don't really take no. So yeah, that'd be cool. It's like, is it cool? Is it really? So yeah, we are tampering with God, definitely.
The word Antichrist is really triggering.
It is, because again, if you've got the evangelical lens, if you've got the materialist lens, if you've got this pointy finger lens, of course naturally people are like, oh. But if you really understand it from a structural point of view, and you see it from the metaphorical stance, or even using Ian McGilchrist's language in terms of the differences between both hemispheres of the brain, it's not pop psychology per se. Left hemisphere does this, right hemisphere of the brain does that, but it's more the right hemisphere leans towards metaphor, leans towards understanding the holy, the sacred, versus left hemisphere is more geared towards the black and white stuff, the stuff to dissect, you know. So why did I say that? What was the point of Ian McGilchrist? It was to link towards the Antichrist perspective, yes. So I listen, we're finite creatures, so what does that even mean? What does you believe it's going to be a complete material perspective, or do you believe unconsciously it's going to be a certain pattern that unveils in reality? Because people are so, I'm not saying I know everything, I don't. I'm fallen. Sometimes I fail. But patterns do unveil itself over time, and that's why Jung created that book Ion. There's a book, he literally creates a thesis related to astrological projections. It's a bit wacky, but he links it to the collective unconscious, and then he links it to, well, the last 2,000 years from his eyes was the pattern of Christ. It was the ion of Christ. And that age of Christ is now ending. And so we're going to have, from his perspective, anti-Christ energy, or an anti-Christian perspective. And what does anti-Christian mean? It just means the values are just inverse. It's just they're the opposite way around. So we're getting close to that. And he wrote that book again 100 years ago, I would say. It's a it's a wacky book, but
I mean, so and then you can see it now. Now we talked earlier about Christ energy and love and humility and all that, and you can just tell in today's age it's
subtle. It's subtle.
It's on its head, right?
Antichrist can be it's subtle.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, right, about
soft
it.
Power.
Yeah,
soft power.
That you don't even notice it.
What's the idea of Lucifer? Lucifer as an idea is the one that brings light, but it's a false light.
It's a false light. Yeah,
it's light. It's it can it's manipulative and it seems good. It does. It really does.
Like a moth to a flame. Almost.
Yeah. It's there, but it's not there.
That's why it's the same thing like AI and all of this. It's like, wow, cool. Like, it's going to be great. But then...
But surely, like, where there's dark, there's light. I know we were talking about two lights.
Yeah, absolutely.
One fake light.
Absolutely.
But it's almost like I think you need to have both paradigms.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And the pendulum might swing from one to the other because it can't be static.
Yeah, there's the argument even that, like, this is even happening now for us to realize that and bring awareness to it so that we can overcome it. Yeah, and that's another part of who we are. We need to go through lessons to overcome them so that we can just constantly improve, or else we stay the same.
Yeah,
right?
But you think about toxic masculinity in terms of but you think of the pendulum swinging. It's like, why did Andrew Tate arise? He's a toxic character. There's no doubt. If you research and do the digging, he's like, he's toxic. But why? There's been a suppression of a certain masculine energy in the culture. So he was bound to rise. He was bound to rise in the culture. So you can say people get attached with that phenomenon and be like, oh, how do you like Andrew? It's like, you can distinguish Andrew Tate, put him as a character, but you can also put the phenomenon of the movement as something else, a different kind of energy that comes across. It's like, why? People don't ask the why in terms of why that popped up. And if you have a certain, it might not be obvious, again, the subtlety of the masculine perspective. It's not so obvious where it's like, oh, we're still, as men, we're fine. Obviously, we're fine. But there is a certain kind of subtle kind of,
it's like a dampening.
Yeah, men, you're not so good.
Yeah.
Let's support. Yeah, it's this idea.
Men are trash.
All these ideas. Yeah. And it does impact. It does impact the psyche. Yeah, for sure. So. Again, it's pendulum swings and roundabouts. If you keep doing one thing, another thing arises. So you just have to keep your eye on the ball with these kind of ways of looking at the world. But Christ is just the mega, he would say, is the mega pattern.
Yeah. I mean, it's starting to become clear, like what you mean. Obviously, it's like when anyone brings up Christ in any conversation, you immediately like, is you like really religious?
You're gonna convert me?
But then it's like when you have a proper intellectual conversation like this, you just start to understand that, like, you don't have to completely subscribe. No. It's just
so you're talking about what Christ represents, the personification of Christ.
Yeah,
not necessarily whether you
agree
with
by using that for
I can have my views. I think you know my views. I don't need to be explicit with my views. But because it's important to. Because if I'm sitting here and all I'm saying is, you must become Christian, how does that help? That doesn't help people. I don't think it does. And I think it's very important to ground many ideas and many truths. So I think the key thing I want to do is just talk about the virtues, talk about the ideals, the archetypes. So, and that's why again, because we're talking about Christ a lot, but I have to mention this again. It's just the West is built on Christ. So it's like, what do we do to move forward? So my opinion is we do need to take a step back a little bit to retrieve the golds we've got underneath our feet before we start moving those 2 steps forward, where Elon Musk wants to make us a multi-planetary species. That's cool, but if we haven't got our house in order, for me it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So it's that time. I think this century be the time of a lot of people thinking about these ideas. What do we do? I think we've gone a bit too far with certain things. We've lost wisdom. modern architecture is all about, let's make as much money as possible, blah, 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 blah. Where's the sacred architecture gone? Where's this reverence for something higher? It's all gone. So it's like this is where these discussions are needed to kind of bring people's attentions from a more grounded angle. Like this is very important.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think I think a lot of society gets their strength or confidence from external factors, when actually that's the lack. It's actually empty. Whereas actually they need to be more self-reflective and actually have some, develop the self-awareness. Because I mean, we were saying the other day, it's all very well for folks to say, be your authentic self, but actually sometimes it takes years of self-reflection to actually figure out who you are, to actually get to the point where you are self-aware and actually what you do believe.
And then the work starts from
and
there.
Then the work starts. then once you become self-aware, I mean, I've kind of had a major shift in the last couple of years, just coming out of my head into actual being in the present, and it's been amazing for everyone that's kind of around me. But it's taken work.
And it's ongoing as well.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's a pursuit for wisdom. That's
I mean, I've been teetotal for 10 years. And I wondered whether it was just the layers of the onion. If you're kind of in your own mind, for 10 years, without any drugs or alcohol or anything like that. Okay, caffeine. Yeah. But and then it's like, and I just wonder whether it actually took me 10 years to get to this point. Anyway.
Yeah, no.
Then we start rocket pods.
Yeah, true.
Explore, sharing these conversations with the world, and
but it's true.
Inspiring folks and helping them think for themselves. And
no, it's true. It's the pursuit for wisdom. Like I said, that's what every human being goes through that process, and it's some people stop at a certain point. That's fine. But if you really want to pursue some sort of wisdom, you do have to seek wide and far. You might have to make a few mistakes. You might have to trip up. You might have to read something you completely disagree with as well. Yeah. And that's the pursuit. And also internally, like you described, the pain. It's like, well, you have to face pain. You have to feel what you need to feel. But then also don't overly emphasize, because in our cultures, feelings, like I mentioned, it's once you've felt what you needed to feel and you've removed that baggage, move forward, take action. That's a very important masculine caveat and a human caveat, to be honest with you. Just take action.
And if you try new things, you will, I mean, I don't know whether there's another word for fail, but you are going to make mistakes. You are going to go down rabbit holes. And it's almost like if you're not experiencing that pain or that failure or whatever, then you're not actually trying. And I think it should be, again, we need to kind of flip that on its head. Failure is actually a really healthy thing, because you learn from that. Well, hopefully.
Trial and error.
I think I told you before that the easiest way to remember it's not wins and losses, it's wins and lessons.
That's nice.
Yeah, the L stands for lesson, not loss. That's
Agreed.
just the easiest way to remember it.
Agreed.
There's a lot of things that we're obviously unconscious about, and collectively as well. I know you don't do too much of the whole shadow work side of things anymore. But there's an essence of that practice, or even just the quick checking yourself and trying to look for like into the shadow. Do you want to can you sort of break that down a little bit into a very tangible way that people can just sort of take with them sort of every day and do a little bit of practice?
Because I think you've got to integrate the black and white and that, it's not fluffy, but the more abstract ideas of collective unconscious kind of together. Focus on the very simple things you can do in your life. Are you exercising? Are you trying to eat healthy? Like these very simple things in life that you can just do. Now it gets more complicated, where obviously there might be a certain pattern of behavior where you be avoiding that type of responsibility. So it goes back to the inner world. It goes back to, what are you avoiding in your life? So that'd be a very good question to ask people watching this. It's like, what are you avoiding? What are you avoiding? It could be the most simple thing. It could be at work, you don't answer your phone calls. It could be instead of cooking the meal that, let's say, your partner asks you to cook, you just leave it aside, and that creates and it's a very small thing, but these avoidant tendencies, they do creep up and they become worse and worse and worse.
They compound.
Absolutely. And so that you get more avoiding with other tasks. So I would ask the people, what are you avoiding? Once you know what you're avoiding, you can write them down, make a list. Okay, cool, I'm avoiding this, I'm avoiding. Okay, great. then there has to be a protocol of just, you got to take action now, you know, and you got to use your awareness as being the observer in terms of watching yourself. It's like, am I doing the right things? If I do the wrong things, call myself out. It's like, okay, that wasn't so good over there.
Yeah.
Let me try a bit better next time, because it's a habit too. There's habitual patterns that do occur over time. Okay. Regarding the collective unconscious, though, it does get tricky, because it's not because it's too abstract, but at the same time it goes beyond your will. It's not something you can control. It's like, well, there is an element of, I believe we have free will, but I believe the world is deterministic, meaning that we don't have as much control over our lives, because there is forces at work. But this is where the goal in life is to capture a bit more free will in your life. So there is also an element of, look, you do have to learn your lessons along the way, and maybe you're not learning your lessons now, but the only way is you still have to embrace life in its totality. You have to embrace and see where it lands. So I think people do overcomplicate the process, I do believe. But yeah, it's just, the key thing is just the avoidance element, in my opinion.
I mean, do you know much about the collective unconscious?
I don't.
Okay. Maybe just like a really quick crash course on the shadow. And the misconception about the shadow.
I'm totally unfamiliar with that concept.
And then how that links to the collective unconscious. And then bringing back to why it's
cool.
And then maybe why you moved away from it.
So I would say the shadow, it's very popular in the New Age communities as well, but the shadow is actually really based on Jungian thought again, Carl Jung, and it's more related to the dark side, but the dark side not being your bad side, it's just the bit you can't see. So it actually links to, again, the unconscious. It's dark, it's looming. So the shadow's parts you can't see. So there's a differentiation between, he would describe the personal unconscious versus the collective unconscious. The personal unconscious is related to stuff that you can control, or stuff, you know, maybe trauma, this and that, you've buried it underneath the carpet. They're things that you're kind of aware of, but now they've become more unconscious because you pushed it aside. So that's more the personal unconscious. So again, the shadow is about just trying to bring as much light in, which is, again, the avoidance mechanism. It's don't avoid it, face it, face what you need to face.
Face your demons almost, or
exactly.
Face whatever.
Whatever you're hiding.
Whether new or whatever.
So that begins there, the personal unconscious. Now it gets, the collective bit is, again, this is where, again, Jung, a wackier character, but he's basically, Jordan Peterson loves Carl Jung as well. So the collective shadow is more something that's more generational. It expands beyond your lifetime. And this is what I meant beyond your will. It's like, well, is there, people talk about collective trauma in modern psychological circles, and there is something to it. There is. So I think the best thing you can do is begin with that personal shadow level, just the things you can't see, the things you've been avoiding, bring light to it because it's dark. The collective, this is where you have to let life evolve, and but as long as you've learned the basics from that part of the journey, in terms of facing your personal unconscious, you can at least be more attentive, more aware, and you're more able to face what you need to face moving forward in life. So
I love that.
Actually, I like the breaking it down to the really tiny things. You know, are you not making your bed? You know, are you missing meals? That those little things can add up to actually maybe discovering this.
Absolutely.
You know,
monster,
personal unconscious initially, because it's they kind of you can almost build momentum, and then you do one thing and it's easier to do something else, or it's, again, it makes you more self-aware too.
Absolutely.
So
it really truly is. It's very interesting, right? Because you start to realize there's so many factors that are actually influencing you in your everyday life that you have no idea about. And so then you look at culture and society and even just the whole world, I guess. You can see how it's all moving, and there's other things in play that we have just no idea about, and we're collectively unconscious about it. So that's like...
one little... I'm just thinking one little tool that I've used. I can actually set myself a problem before bed and actually solve it in the morning. And that came up yesterday, didn't it?
Yeah.
And it's I know that's a different subject, but it's in there. I got the answers, but it's but it's being intentional about
Yes.
actually there's something in my brain or there's something in my conscious that I need to kind of pull out, and it's there, but you just haven't figured it out. And sometimes you're better off just putting your tools down and going to bed.
Yeah.
It's different.
yeah.
I don't know whether you have done that.
Suck it. See you later. Bye.
I mean, yeah, it's like being in co-creation with God. I know that's like
I think
because we had quite a conversation about this before.
Yeah.
But us being children of God and still having the same kind of aspects of God, we're still able to create. We are creators by nature. We love with capital L love, which is what everything comes from, if you obviously subscribe to this. But I think coming back to like what's going on now compared to before, we've really lost this. We're really divided.
Yes.
And so like, am I right in saying that you believe that we should find some sort of connection back to whatever it may be, and it doesn't have to be in the same understanding that religions have of God or New Age spirituality has on God, but some sort of connection to something other than the self?
Yes, I believe we need to reconnect with something a bit more sacred, and we should have a bit more reverence towards our existence, because cliche, but it is a miracle that we're here. It really is. If you, again, not to put the materialist hat on, but you might as well, in terms of the span of the universe, as far as we're aware, and then the amount of time we've been on this planet as the human race, it's really not that long. It is a miracle. So you should have, naturally, there should be a bit of reverence, a bit of respect, a bit of awe to like, wow. That's what we mean about the ancients looking at the stars, when again we live in a city and we can't even see the stars properly. So you look at it, it's like, wow, what even is this? Like, what? And we still don't know. No one knows what it is. You know, so even the Big Bang Theory was created by a Catholic priest, which I always find hilarious. And you read the Bible, and there's the void, and then the light came. It's like, oh, sounds like the Big Bang Theory, doesn't it? Yeah. So I think we just need to connect back to like just this idea there is something more, and not think, look, we can become our own gods from the negative sense. I know what you mean when you stated we can become godlike. I think that's a good way to describe it. But we start thinking we can become our own gods. God. The Superman, you know, what Nietzsche mentions, the Übermensch, you know, try and create this AI, you know, Tony Stark, Iron Man kind of character, and we can become these super gods. It's like, well, you got to be careful, because again, it's in some ways it's a narcissistic endeavor. It's what's your intention behind the action,
and what's the end goal? Which
yes,
is you're
absolutely.
Big on,
you always have to question the end goal in life.
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Is there a link between God and consciousness? And the reason I say that is I'm very new into meditation, and I've had some really enlightening experiences in the last year, I think.
Yes.
And cool. I've had out of body experiences. I've had really amazing. Experiences, and I just think for me, I've never been happier, and I feel I've come connected with myself. But of course, there's always a bit of a conflict, because you know how I was raised and how I've been conditioned, and again, it's like layers of the onion, peeling things up, you know, rejecting things that I no longer believe, and maybe I'm just on a journey, and maybe I'll come full circle, maybe I won't, but you know. Can you describe that? You know, that consciousness and God. And,
interesting.
But I know that. But you could again say it's kind of narcissistic, because it's, you know, about self, but for me it's, you know, it's like getting that strength from within rather than from external things. So
it's a fine line. It's a fine line. Again, it's the intention behind why you so focused on, you know, trying to find God within. What's the intention behind it? I think again the evangelical angle is really misconstrued Christianity in that way. Then it's more focused on, if you're an Orthodox or even a traditional Catholic, let's say, it's obviously there's reverence and again going to the churches, there's an archetypal structure in the churches. It looks beautiful, there's art, it's majestic. And so when you understand from the Christian angle, the Trinity, for example, everyone carries like a Holy Spirit. What even is that? It's the third person of the Trinity, the third person of the Godhead. So even from the Christian angle, you carry God within. You carry, and it's
the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit's a part, is God. It wouldn't, the caveat is it's not actually the creator beyond the universe, which, fine. But you do carry a spark of divinity within you. And so again, it laces with Buddhism, it laces with those perspectives, even though Buddhism would say there's no self, so they can be selfless. That's the idea in Buddhism, and life is Maya, illusion, in the Buddhist perspective. But Christianity does have this element that actually, no, we got the Holy Spirit. There is the touch of God, let's say. And that's beautiful. Like, really,
maybe I'm reconnecting with that.
It's really beautiful.
It's there somewhere.
I think it's misconstrued. That's why I like talking about Christianity. I think it's a very misconstrued paradigm in a place where actually this is a beautiful religion. It's like fully asleep, because no one, again, Christianity, how seriously do people take it? Maybe some from a very black and white angle, and then the other angle, not really. It's just some cultural kind of, it's like, it's very unfortunate, very, in my opinion.
I can relate to it a lot, because my mother's side of the family is Catholic, and so when my parents split up, we went to church a lot and stuff, and it's not that I was kind of deterred from the religion itself or what the Bible was saying, but it's just that when I was trying to ask questions to help my understanding, because everybody is different, every individual is different, that I wasn't allowed to even ask the question. So that turned me into an atheist, because I was just like, well, this is all just like
common. That's very common.
But then now I'm coming back, and it's not that I feel like I even want to go back and become a devoted Catholic, but I appreciate it, and I'm so grateful for it, and I think it's beautiful, and it helps me a lot in my own way. And I think that's like the most important thing.
But it goes back to the current culture, the modern age. You know, everything about me, there's a little bit of self-hate at this, paradoxically as well. There's self-hate. There's no ideals for people to reach. And then, like I mentioned, the Christian, there's hate towards that perspective, because it's the religion of the West historically. So it's like, I don't want that. I want to try something different. It's like, you know, you can't. It's not always about.
Anyway. So I think a nice way that we could close is actually the same sort of topic that we closed our last conversation off of, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and it's centered around you asking me, so what's your framework?
Oh, your paradigm.
What's your paradigm? Like, but more so in terms of, because of the fact that we are individuals and we create our own beliefs based off of things that we take from everything, right? But from there, we have to create a framework, right? Or something that we sort of, and that can grow and that can change over time. But you mentioned that it's important to have something that you stick to, like values and just your beliefs and sticking to it with conviction. That is a trait that we've lost.
Absolutely.
Right?
Agreed.
That's so what how can we start to like put that together for ourselves? Do you have any advice for that?
I think generally just resurrect the gold in the past. It's just really looking back, not with this ugly eye of, the past was horrific, you know, it was all bloodshed. It's like, bloodshed was there, but there's also very, very important bits that are very good. So I think, again, part of being aiming for objective truth is you've got to be unbiased when you're looking at different perspectives. So again, when you're looking at different paradigms, what's the perks, what's the negatives, and understanding what is your goal in life. So if you again, you want to have a more traditional setting, not in because even patriarchy, it's been misconstrued even from the masculine side, unfortunately. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like it's all about sleeping around, and it's like this is not healthy either way. You know, the goal should be for a man to love a woman and then to create children. That's important for civilization to still have that ideal, because then civilization dies. If no one's having children, game over. There's no civilization. So I think you've got to understand even what type of world you want, but also understanding you can't cherry pick everything at the same time. And you must draw a certain line underneath the sand and say, look, you know, right now, maybe this ideal is hard, or maybe this is tough, but I think this is the best thing I can do. It goes back to the sacrificial love element. It's a better choice than being hedonistic for another 10 years.
Yeah.
What does that lead you to? Maybe a bit of nihilism, a bit of self-hatred, a bit of more pain that is unnecessary. But how about if you're a bit more productive with your life? How about as a man, you settle down earlier with a beautiful woman, let's say, you create a beautiful family, you become more productive for society, you become more productive for your community, let's say. If more people just aim for that very simple but powerful and beautiful ideal, I think the world would be a better place. So it begins in that rock, that family kind of threshold. But the paradigm element, again, I'm not, even though I have the Christian lens, I think traditional perspectives in general are good gateways, in my opinion. That's it.
Yeah, and that's obviously me listening to that. Like, there's a million ways that people can even take what you just said, like, even out of context. But it's the balance, right? Yes, absolutely,
absolutely. Again, nuanced, slightly off topic to what you're saying, but there's a lack of nuance because everyone's trying to be like black and white. It's either this or that. It's like there is something called nuance. Going back to Ian McGilchrist's right hemisphere of the brain, there is something. You need a bit of nuance to understand truth, and even truth. There's elements of truth that can have a paradoxical flavor to truth. When you're aiming up, it does get a bit more. Oof, this gets a bit harder to grab for obvious reasons. So,
it's just it's really hit me from the last time, especially because I really understood more what you meant about like everything feels really floaty. Because I realized I was, even though I started to see that already, even within myself, it just hit me even more when you would like straight up were like, okay, but what's your framework? And I was like, I don't actually have one. I'm very like happy taking lessons from many different places and forming my own thing. But what is my thing? I've never actually sat down and set aside the time like, okay, what are actually my fundamental beliefs and values and, virtues and all these things that I should stick to. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it can't change. And I mean, do you have thoughts on that?
I think I was just thinking about my motivations. It's probably truth seeking, and it's just trying to understand myself. It's been a journey into the present moment to be self-aware. I think your comments about reverence and being in awe of where we are, and there's that wow, that universe up there, and is there a higher being? Is there a God? I think that's something maybe we've lost a bit. I think to know that, to kind of put ourselves in, we're tiny little specks of dust, on the earth, and and that is amazing. And so I think it's definitely food for thought, and I think society has kind of lost its way a bit, and everyone's been pulled in different directions, and the things that we're attracted to, the eye candy on the social, and there's a lot of this sexy, bright colors, and but actually people are very lost. And I think having some kind of framework, even if, and I keep coming back to the dotted lines on the road, if there was no line in the middle of the road, the cars would collide. So you do need a bit of structure.
Absolutely.
And it's that form and function. If you have too much form, then you don't have function. And I guess it's a very personal thing.
Absolutely.
And it's very, even though there's objective truth, and you touched on, what objectivity is, everyone's unique and different.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I think we need to kind of celebrate our uniqueness. I think it's good to stop and self-reflect, and actually, like Xander said, he hasn't actually given any time to figure out what he believes.
I have since.
But that's a journey. But that is a journey.
Stuff.
That can take
Exactly.
Absolutely.
decades,
Absolutely.
You can't expect everything to happen overnight.
No,
but you can start with the little things.
Yes.
And I think personal unconsciousness. I mean, wow, that's kind of interesting. Hadn't thought about that. So it's been it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah.
I love it. I love your way of just being very succinct, and you've got some lovely qualities, and how you kind of just trying to describe things, and it's just been really fun to listen to you.
I appreciate it.
That's one of my favorite qualities about you pretty much is that, like, you're right, you said at the very beginning, these are really dense, like intellectual, like really broad topics, but you have this way of bringing it down and packaging it up, and here you go, this is a nice little way of understanding. And yeah, we're really grateful for you to come on today, man. Yeah, do you have any parting wisdom for our guests?
I think it goes back to, I'll just repeat what I'm saying, but it's to drum it home, really. It's to focus on if there are objective qualities in the world in terms of how to act, ideals, values, beauty, truth, love. I think we're all individuals and they will manifest uniquely within your life. But I think it's very important to recognize that when you're seeking truth, when you're seeking wisdom, you will find more sources of virtues that will guide you along a certain path. And wherever the path lands, let it land. But I think it's important to at least seek for those virtues in the first place. So just remember that. Amazing.
And I think I want to do a special book recommendation segment really quickly before we sign off, because you love reading. Yes. And I think for anyone interested in any of these topics, I'd say let's go with 3. Can you name 3?
I for whatever reason, Ian McGilchrist's book came up, but actually I'm trying to, because now you put me on the spot. If I was more prepared, there's quite a lot of books to condense it to 3. It's quite tricky. Because I don't want to say the obvious ones like Marcus Aurelius Meditations and things like that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah.
Let's go with. Okay, fine. I'll change that. What's one book that has really hit you and you feel like out of all of the ones that you love, which one would, if you could only hand over one to someone else, which one would that be?
I think actually a good book was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's a very powerful book. It's a small book, but it's about his. He was in the Holocaust, and then it was his journey towards realizing his mind was the final bastion, basically, and he found peace in the Holocaust. And then he actually ended up creating his own therapy called logotherapy, which is associated with finding meaning in life. So I think that book's really powerful. It's very short, so. That book made me, like maybe my mind is the final bastion. So that's a good book. Another book I would say in New Age circles is very popular, but Eckhart Tolle's Power Now.
That's brilliant. I love that book. It's a hard one. It's a tough read. I found it, but it's really good.
It did help with when I was 4 years ago going to the park and just practicing mindfulness, because I liked active meditation, let's say, in terms of moving. Sitting down, it works, but I find it easier just to be very present whilst walking. It really did give me those glimpses of like wow, so that's a good book as well. I've got to put a Christian one. I do.
While you think on that, I did want to say I listened to the audiobook version of The Power of Now, and usually I prefer reading, but for some reason that, I don't know, it's the same thing, like being on the train when I was going to work, going into London and, or just walking and being around, but hearing him talk about that and hearing the pauses and allowing myself, I don't know, something about it with The Power of Now.
Yeah.
If I could recommend.
In a beautiful way.
Yeah.
It's very simple. If you want to understand Christianity from more of a grounded perspective, even the idea of Satan, because it's like, oh, what's that? But if you want to understand it just from a very grounded perspective, there's a polymath called René Girard, and he's got a book called I Saw Satan Fall Like Lightning, and it's very powerful. He analyzes something called the scapegoat mechanism in this book, and he talks about there's always this idea in the Bible of, pointing fingers at someone, but obviously Jesus Christ is the one that kind of redeems the story. But he compares it to other mythological stories, other religious structures as well. So I think it's a good way to even ground a bit of Christianity. So if you're interested in that,
that is such a powerful title for a book. What was that again?
I See Satan Fall Like Lightning.
That's quite good.
He's amazing. He's wicked. Honestly, his theories are very cool. Amazing.
Thank you, Philippe. And before we sign off, where can people find you?
Do you want to be found?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question. To be fair, I'm not on YouTube. I'm not on YouTube.
But you are now.
Yeah, that's it. That's funny. But Instagram, you can find me. Twitter, and I have a Patreon channel as well. But you do have to subscribe. So those are the 3 places. You can find me.
And what's your handle?
I can't remember top of my head, but I'm sure you put it on.
Yeah, I'll put it on. I think it was Felipe Dinis, right?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Thank you, Felipe.
Thank you. It's been really insightful.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Rocket Pod with Felipe. When you get a moment, we'd love it if you could jump over to whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on and leave a quick review. We love all your messages. It helps us get inspired and maybe pick the next guests, or actually you can help us pick the next guest to help you on your journey.
Yeah, and speaking of guests, today we went into a lot of topics. I think there's a lot to cover today, but I think overall it was nice to see how everything is connected, and I think that's sort of the overarching kind of topic, that, you know, society and culture changes through time, but then there's a lot of patterns that
stay consistent.
Yeah, they don't repeat exactly the same way, but these kinds of things, including archetypes, they live on. So yeah, that I think that was the most interesting thing to me.
Yeah, and I know that, I mean, I probably shared more personal things than I was kind of anticipating to, and there were some things that Felipe raised that definitely I had a feeling I had to kind of respond. So yeah, he's obviously a master at what he does, and it was a real joy to kind of learn a bit more about myself, actually, to be honest. It kind of highlighted for me that, you know, we are all on our own spiritual journey. And I think Felipe just only scratched the surface, but it was an interesting discussion.
Yeah, definitely.
So
definitely. Yeah, so if you like this one, remember to subscribe, follow us on social media so you don't miss a beat, and we will see you in the next one.
Take care.